So what we're going to do is take a look at the Maya interface and create a very basic scene. So the first thing you want to do when you're opening up a newer version of Maya, like Maya 2023, is you want to click on this new button here, and that'll create a new scene for you. Now there's a couple different viewing options, and you can access them here, where these are called essentially panel layouts. So if you click this one, you can see this is our 4-panel layout, this is our 2-panel layout, and this very first option is 1 panel. I tend to like to work in 1 panel, but it's sometimes easier to switch between the two. Now at the bottom of each one of these panels, you can see there's a description: top, perspective, side, and front. What I'd like to do is create like a very basic snowman scene. So what I'm going to do is first, let's clean up our viewport or interface a little bit by going, instead of to animation here, to modeling standard. And that kind of gives us a little bit more room to work in. If your channel box undocks, just kind of move it over to the right hand side of your screen and it should dock itself. I'm just going to make sure all of these are docked together by just dragging and dropping them on top of each other. So I want to make sure this is on here too. There we go. So just as it highlights in a blue. So if that does it to you, you can do it that way. Another thing is you could just go on general and it should reset your view so things look like this. So let's actually do that. Go to general. Now, I'm going to click on this button here on the left-hand side and make up my 4-panel layout. I also want to get rid of all of this descriptive information, so I'm going to go to display here, heads up display, and I'm going to turn off poly count. So if yours is there, you can remove that. Now let's go ahead and create a very basic snowman scene. In order to create some geometry, go up to the left-hand corner here under create and go to polygon primitives and then just select plane. And you could see it created a plane with a bunch of little grid lines here. If I hit the F key for focus, you could see that it zooms in on that grid. Now, in order to change it, because I don't really need all of these edges or cuts, I'm going to click on this polyplane 1, and it's saying that I have subdivisions for width 10 and 10. I'm just going to type a 1 in each one of those by left-clicking in there and changing it. Now, what I'd like to do is this plane here, and I know it's selected because I can left-click on it or I can click off of it, but when I left-click on it, it gives it this green highlight. And I want to make it as big as this grid. So I'm going to hit R, and I'm going to scale this up. Alternatively, notice as I scale this up or down, in the channel box here, so if you don't see your channel box, you can click here, it gives me these different numbers. So for example, if I type in 20 by 20 by 20, it scales it by a factor of 20 on the X, Y, and Z axis. Now, notice here this scale tool. You might be like, well, how did you get that? Off to the left-hand side here, I have my scale tool, my rotation tool, my move tool, and so on. So for my move tool, this allows me to move objects or elements around. Now, if I'd like to rotate, and I can only do this in my persp or perspective view, I can hold Alt and left-click, and it allows me to rotate. Again, holding the left mouse button and Alt at the same time, I rotate around the scene. Now, if I just scroll the wheel on my mouse, I can zoom in and out. Alternatively, if you hold the Alt key and you hold the right mouse button down, this is if you don't have a mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out this way. So Alt and right mouse button. And then the next thing you want to do is, say we want to pan, which is this camera that we're looking through. If you click the wheel in on your mouse, sorry, let me click off for a second, and you hold Alt, you can pan. So holding the Alt key and clicking in my middle wheel, I can pan. I can zoom in and out with my wheel. And then holding Alt and left clicking, I can rotate. Notice that my locator is really huge here. Locator is what this thing is called that moves it. If you locate the minus key on the keyboard, you can scale it down. And that's to the left of the backspace key on your keyboard. Or if I hit the plus key on my keyboard, I can shrink it or make it bigger. See that? So let's go ahead and click off of this, deselecting this. And I'm going to zoom in on this view. A trick to zoom in on a single view is to hit the space bar on that view. If you want to return to the 4 panels, you can hit space bar again, or you can click these 4 images here. So we can go from perspective to 4 panels. So just an alternate way of doing it. It just makes it a little bit easier on me. Another way I like to model is by clicking these 2 here, and this will give me my front and perspective view. But for now, because I want you to get a little bit more used to working in 3D, try your best to work only in the perspective view. So I'm going to hit spacebar on this or click this button. Let's go ahead and create the bottom of the snowman. Now we know a snow person is made up of different pieces, right? So I'm going to go to create polygon primitive sphere. And the predominant pieces it's made up on are little circles. So when you create a new geometric object, it usually creates it in the center of the scene. If you do not see this, you might have interactive creation on. So when you click on interactive creation, and we know that's on because it has a tick mark, and we click on sphere, you can see here when I left click and drag it in here, it lets me create my own sphere of whatever size I want. And just like with our plane, we can also adjust the number of subdivisions. So I can make this 10 if I want it lower, less defined. Notice how it looks a little bit more faceted. Or I could leave it at 20. Now notice what I did this time is I clicked in one and I held down the left mouse button. And that allowed me to select 2 and I typed 20. If you feel more comfortable, you could type 20 and click in each one separately. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and move this sphere above my ground plane. Something that helps me to visualize because they're the same color is I generally turn on these options here. So this is wireframe unshaded. And then a few options over, you can see there's this shadows option, but we don't have any lights in our scene, so I'm going to leave that off. And then there's this ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is when any two objects meet, it creates a shadow. So I'm going to drag this up. Oops, wrong one. I'm going to left click on my sphere and drag this up like this. And then I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to click on this arrow. So I'm holding shift first. Now notice, because I held shift and I went on this arrow, the word clone appears on that arrow. So that allows me to copy this. Now, most snowmen have a smaller upper torso. So I'm going to hit R. I'm going to scale this down. And I'm going to hit W and move this down a little bit. Now, say I want this to look a little more squished because the weight of the next sphere is on top of it. So I can actually select this base, hit R, shrink this just a little bit, showing that there's a little bit of pressure on that. Move it down to the ground. Same thing on this one. Squish that one down a little bit more. Hit W, move that down. Then I'm going to hold shift again, move this up, hit R, and scale that down. Now, there's these different axes. And if I go to display, heads up display, view cube, which is right here, it lets me see the right side is this one, the left side is this one, and then this is actually the front of my keyboard, of my snowman. And what's nice about this is I can actually click on that side and it'll actually sort of give me a perspective right view. And again, I'm holding Alt and left clicking. Let's go ahead and create the two eyes. So what we can do in our front view is I'm going to hold shift and just bring this forward. Then I'm going to hit R and scale this down. I'm going to hit W, just sort of move this and position it where I think the eyes would look pretty cool. So I'm going to hold shift and just move these over. Now let's create the carrot nose like this. So I'm going to go up to the top here and I'm going to go to create polygon primitives and I'm going to use a cone for this. Now because I have interactive creation on, it's instructing me to drag the base of my cone. So I'm going to hold the left mouse button down and just click and drag it up. And once I release my left mouse button, it says drag up to set the height. So I have to click the left mouse button again to create that cone. Alternatively, if we go to create polygon primitives here and we turn off interactive creation, if this is a little bit easier for you to do, just go ahead and do create a cone and then we can always edit it later, right? So I'm going to move this up, position it here. Then I'm going to hit E to rotate. So I'm going to rotate this and under rotate X, I'm going to make it 90 degrees. I'm going to hit R, scale this down a little bit, scale this forward, hit W and bring this down. So something like this. So let's hit R again, scale this up, and there is our carrot nose. Now, let's go ahead and create our character's hat. So I'm going to go to create polygon primitive, and I'm going to make a cylinder. So one issue that you can see is that every time we create some geometry, it's hidden and it starts at the center of the world. If you press the number 4 on your keyboard, it allows us to see things in wireframe. If you press 5, it shows it as shaded. So let's hit 4 so we can better select our cylinder. And then what I want to do is just move it up so it sits on top of my character's head. I'm going to hit R to scale this down a little bit. hit W to move it down. Now to create the brim of the hat, I'm going to hold Shift and scale this up, or copy that rather, clone, hit R again, and then scale it down this way. And then in the center, scale it out, and then hit W again and move it just on top of the character's head like this. So we get something that looks like that. All right, so we've got some basic primitives. Let's model a little house for our character to sit in. So this is going to require us to do not only make a box for a house, but it's going to require us to use some things called modeling tools. So let's go to create polygon primitive cube. I'm going to move this back a little bit. I'm going to hit R and scale this up. Then I'm going to hit W, place it here. And what I'd like to do is start off by making a door. So geometry consists of these different elements. So if I hold the right mouse button down on this object, and it is selected, so you want to make sure it's selected, it has these green things. You have the face, you have the edge, and you have a vertex. So if I go to face mode, notice I can select these faces. If I hold the right mouse button down, I go to vertex, notice I can select these vertices. If I right click again, I can select these edges. Now, alternatively, you can also select these by pressing F11 and different options on the keyboard, right? Let's see. So for example, if I hit Fin F11, that allows me to go to edge mode. And I'm on a keyboard, I'm sorry, face mode. And then if you hit F12, it allows me to go to vertex mode. And then if I hit F10, it allows me to go to this, or F9, it lets me go to these different modes. I'm on a keyboard, and I'm actually recording, and my application has F9 mapped to stopping the application from working, like it'll kill my recording, so I'm not going to hit that, but just so you know. So let's right click, and let's go to face mode. Let's select this front face. Now I'd like to extrude this in to create a door. So I can actually hit, I'm in modeling here, mesh, extrude, let's see if we can, or I'm sorry, edit mesh, and then we want to look for extrude. Let's see, where is my extrude? I generally don't really, here it is, Control E, because I'm always using hotkeys. And what I want to do is just click this one of these little boxes, and you can see this blue box appears in the center. So I'm going to scale that in. Then I'm going to select this face on the bottom, and I'm going to delete this face by selecting it, and it turned brown. I'm going to press delete. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to press W, and I'm just going to move it down so it's sort of intersecting that. Now I'm going to hit R, and I'm going to scale this door down a little bit. And I want it to be generally the height of my snowman. So what I can do is right click, go to edge mode, select this edge, and press W, and then move this up. So that door looks like it fits it. All right, now I'm going to make the door kind of go inside a little bit. So I'm going to right click, go to face mode, select this face. Now another way of extruding, instead of hitting Control E, is if you hold that Shift key down, I can actually extrude just by holding Shift. I'm not releasing Shift and just clicking on that arrow, and that'll allow me to extrude it. So let's do that up here. I'm going to make a roof. So I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to extrude this up. And then what I could do with these two faces, I can hit R, and I can just scale it in to make like a little roof like this. So we have a little roof for our house. So that's pretty cool. Now, if I want to, I can actually create a window here as in a different way of doing it. So I'm going to actually add some cuts to make a window. So I'm going to go up here to mesh, or I'm sorry, edit mesh, mesh tools, forgive me, insert edge loop. And what that allows me to do is if I left click on one of these edges, I can add a cut here, another cut there, a couple more this way. And now you can see I created two boxes or two little cubes here. So I'm going to right click, go to face mode. Then I'm going to press W to go back to my move tool. Select this face, hold Shift, and extrude that in. Alternatively, I'm going to select this face, hit Control E just so we could practice that. I'm going to move this off to the side. I'm going to just push that in, something like this. So this is pretty good basic introduction. Let me know if any of this is confusing or you need a little bit more detailed explanation.